Greetings. In trying to understand the Aaron Rodgers phenomenon better, I started doing some reading to really understand what was happening. Uh, and a quote came up in the last game against Dallas that said, sometimes it's kind of sandlot out there. Um, I thought this was an interesting comment because one of the main focal points of the play calling for Green Bay involves having three receivers. Each of those receivers is asked to run down the field, and each receiver has three options of routes that they can run, and it's all contingent upon what the defender does. Aaron Rodgers will then uh, find that receiver and hit them for hopefully a score, but a long gain or whatever it might be. Um, I was kind of surprised to learn that Aaron Rodgers and Green Bay had this process. That's a little bit surprising to learn because most teams have deliberate plays and routes being run by receivers, and the quarterback then sort of follows through and hits that receiver. Um, I thought this was an amazing thing to learn about because, to some extent, the defenders are choosing the route that the player that's the receiver might run. Um, I had heard of things like back shoulder throws um, or regular throws. So in the case of a back shoulder, if the receiver is doing a good job of running ahead of the receiver, um, the player simply expects to get a throw on his back shoulder because there's nothing that a defender in front of you can do in that case. So you simply turn around and catch the ball because the quarterback can see the position of the defender. So I'd heard of back shoulder throws before versus just making a regular throw, because a regular throw would involve a receiver is usually faster than the defender. So the receiver, after one, maybe two moves, simply starts running, and then the quarterback hits them in that process. So I was fascinated to learn of this um, go wherever you want and I'll hit you phenomenon. Um, Another data point I was intrigued by is Aaron Rodgers actually made a comment, this was about 2 years ago, where he said, I looked at the receiver, he ran the wrong route, but I had a pretty good idea where he was going, so I hit him. And that was one of the biggest plays in that game. And now that I understand their play calling, the logic of that totally makes sense in that, he can pick up on the body language of where a player is going and hit them. And that fits in the context of how Green Bay runs plays with Aaron Rodgers as quarterback. So this video's focus was to look at the play calling that goes on in general for Green Bay and how it works. The final phase of the play calling I wanted to look at was what happened or what happens with their lack of running game and how they manage this. Um, in the game yesterday, Ty Montgomery ran up almost 100 yards. The reason why he was allowed to get that yardage is that when Dallas was getting torched by pass after pass and touchdown after touchdown, they had to modify defenders to address what Aaron Rodgers and company was doing. When they made that change, one of the changes was getting rid of heavy linebackers so that you could replace with lighter players who could run with receivers. What this then did was make the running game more possible and effective for Green Bay. So now Montgomery was coming out of the backfield and dealing with possibly a safety or a DB, and the weight were similar, so now he could get decent sized runs and not getting cleaned or clocked by by a huge defender. So this answered a huge question that was lurking, which is how does Green Bay deal with the fact that Elliott is one of the best backs, if not the best back in the league, and they didn't have a similar back uh, to compete with him. And the answer is when everybody on the field is a DB trying to cover your receivers, uh, your back doesn't have to be that good in order to gain yardage and look like a superstar back. You also need some back action, if you will, because it increases when you're running. It increases the time of possession. It also adds new wrinkles to the game that the defenders have to think about while they're in their coverage process. The other issue that comes to mind is that while you're covering your backs, that are coming out of the backfield, that also frees up space where defenders can't entirely commit to those receivers because they know there's a running threat that might occur, if not from the back, even from Aaron Rodgers if things got really hairy. So I'm sort of dedicating this video to a look at play calling process by Aaron Rodgers and how it affects defenders. And the real question mark is, can you sustain this game after game? And I think the answer is yes. And the reason is that with your quarterback at this level and allowing the defenders to determine what the spot for the catch is going to be, they can play with anybody. And with the other advantages of snap counts and accuracy and ability to throw on the run, etc., you know, the Packers can lose, but the arsenal of what they have available to choose from to get a win is phenomenal. Um, in this game, I thought that the advantage of home advantage was really bad referee calls against the Packers while they're playing it in Jerry's house. And they got a good dose of that, but the amount of points that they had ahead allowed them to embrace the impact of this without losing the game. Enjoy. Look forward to covering a couple of other areas of why the Packers fundamentals make them a very successful team, and it's sustainable all the way to the Super Bowl and beyond.